You know what nobody tells you about economic collapse? It's not the moment your bank account hits zero. It's the Tuesday morning when you're standing outside a pharmacy that's been closed for 2 weeks, holding a prescription your kid desperately needs, and realizing that the $50,000 in your savings account is worth less than a single bottle of antibiotics. I've been studying collapses since 2008. Venezuela, Argentina, Zimbabwe, Bosnia, and here's what shocked me. In 2008, ammunition went 20x original price. In Venezuela, people traded jewelry for toilet paper. In Bosnia, one lighter was worth a month of food. Gold has its place, sure. But in those first brutal months, you can't eat it, drink it, or use it to survive. There are 12 ordinary items that become worth more than gold. Today, I'm breaking down 12 supplies you can buy right now for a few dollars each that will be worth hundreds, maybe thousands, when systems fail. Not gold, not crypto. Simple items that solve life and death problems. These are what smart preppers are quietly stockpiling while they're still cheap. Let's get into it. Number 1. Water purification tablets and filters. And listen, this is the most critical item on this entire list. When society starts unraveling, the first thing that goes is clean water. And I'm not talking about weeks into collapse. I'm talking about hours. Water treatment plants require electricity, chemicals, and constant maintenance. The moment those systems fail, you've got a population that's maybe 3 days away from severe dehydration. Here's what most people don't realize. 1 in 3 people have never thought about where their water actually comes from or what happens when it stops flowing from the tap. They turn on the faucet and expect clean water because that's how it's always been. But in every single collapse scenario throughout history, water becomes the immediate crisis. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid, these diseases that we think of as ancient history, they come roaring back the moment sanitation breaks down. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I'll just stock up on bottled water. And yeah, you should. But water is heavy and takes up a ton of space. You physically cannot store enough water to last through an extended crisis. What you need is the ability to make water safe, and that's where purification becomes literally priceless. A Life Straw, which you can buy right now for about $20, can filter 1,000 liters of water. That's enough to keep one person hydrated for almost a year if they're drinking 3 liters a day. Think about that value, a $20 item that provides a year of clean water. When I was doing disaster relief work in Haiti, I saw people who understood water filtration become the most important people in their communities. They weren't trading water for money because money was worthless. They were trading clean water for food, for shelter, for protection, for anything they needed. Stock up on multiple methods. Get tablets, get portable filters, get purification drops. Diversify your approach because if one method fails or runs out, you've got backups. This isn't something you ever want to run out of. Number 2, antibiotics and medical supplies. Here's a truth that makes people uncomfortable. In a real collapse, the number 1 killer isn't violence. It's not starvation. It's infection. A simple cut that gets infected can kill you in a world without antibiotics. And when the medical infrastructure collapses, that world arrives faster than you think. I remember after Hurricane Katrina, one of the first things that happened was pharmacies got looted. Not because people were looking for drugs to sell, though that happened too, but because people with diabetes needed insulin, people with heart conditions needed their medications, and people understood that medical supplies were about to become impossible to get. The pharmacies that didn't get looted, they were empty within days because supply trucks couldn't get through. Here's what you need to stock. First aid supplies, bandages, medical tape, gauze, antiseptic wipes, antibacterial ointment. This stuff is cheap right now. You can build a serious first aid kit for under $100. But when the stores are empty and someone in your family needs it, that $5 tube of antibiotic ointment could literally save a life. Think about the basics that hospitals use every single day. Gloves, masks, rubbing alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, iodine. These items become incredibly valuable because they prevent the infections that kill people when doctors aren't available, During the Soviet collapse, people who had stockpiled basic medical supplies became like unofficial medics in their communities, trading their knowledge and supplies for everything they needed. And look, I'm not saying you should be doing surgery in your living room, but basic wound care, basic hygiene, basic infection prevention, these skills combined with the right supplies can mean the difference between a minor injury and a life-threatening situation. Stock up now while it's easy and cheap. Number 3. Ammunition in common calibers. This one's controversial, but let's be real about it. 1 in 3 Americans owns a gun. That's over 100 million gun owners. But here's the question nobody asks. How many of those people have actually stockpiled enough ammunition? Let me take you back to 2008. The economy crashed, people panicked, and ammunition literally disappeared from shelves overnight. .22 LR rounds, which are some of the most common and useful, were impossible to find for months. When you could find them, people were selling them for 10, sometimes 20 times the original price. I watched people pay $50 for a box of ammo that used to cost $5. And here's why ammunition becomes so incredibly valuable in a collapse. It serves 3 critical purposes. First, protection. When law and order breaks down, and history shows us it always does to some degree, the ability to defend yourself and your family becomes paramount. Second, hunting. If collapse lasts long enough, stored food runs out. The ability to hunt for food could mean the difference between eating and starving. And third, trading. Ammunition is one of the most universally recognized barter items in any collapse scenario. But you can't just stockpile any ammo. You need to focus on common calibers that lots of people use. 9mm is probably the most popular pistol round. .22 LR is incredibly versatile and useful. 12-gauge shotgun shells. .23 or 5.56 for rifles. These are calibers that everyone recognizes and needs. They're standardized, they're in high demand, and they store well for decades if kept dry. I keep ammunition distributed across multiple locations, stored properly with desiccant packs to prevent moisture damage. And here's something most people don't think about. Even if you don't own guns, ammunition is still valuable because you can trade it to people who do. It's compact, it's standardized, and in a barter economy, it's basically currency. Number 4, butane lighters in bulk, not matches, not fancy fire starters with magnesium, not expensive survival gear. I'm talking about cheap plastic Bic lighters. And let me tell you why these become absolute gold in a collapse. There's a survivor from the Bosnian War, and he talks about how a working lighter was more valuable than a generator during the siege. That sounds crazy until you think about it. A generator is loud, it attracts attention, it gets stolen, and it requires fuel that nobody has. But a lighter? It's quiet, it's concealable, and it provides instant, reliable fire in almost any condition. Fire is obviously critical for survival. Everyone knows that. You need it to cook food, boil water, stay warm, signal for help. But what most people don't understand is the psychology of having reliable fire at your fingertips. I was doing winter wilderness training in Montana back in 2018, middle of February. Everything was frozen and wet. The guy next to me had this $80 magnesium fire starter, top-of-the-line survival gear. He spent 45 minutes trying to get a fire going in those conditions. Cold hands, wind blowing, frustration building. I pulled out a 99-cent Bic lighter and had flames in literally 2 seconds. That's when it really clicked for me. In a real emergency, when you're cold, when you're scared, when you're exhausted, you don't want to be messing around with complicated gear. You want something that works every single time with zero skill required. And that's exactly what a lighter provides. But here's what makes lighters truly valuable beyond just starting fires. They're sealed units. Unlike matches that get ruined by humidity or ferro rods that require skill in dry tinder, a lighter works in almost any condition. The fuel is protected inside, the mechanism is simple and reliable, and they last for thousands of lights. I've tested lighters that I stored for over 10 years. They still work perfectly. In a barter economy, lighters become perfect trading units. They're small, they're standardized, everyone immediately understands their value. During Yugoslavia's collapse, A single lighter could be traded for enough food to feed a family for a week. Not because lighters were initially rare, but because people quickly realized that without reliable fire, you're in serious trouble. Here's my setup. I buy lighters by the 50 pack when they go on sale. Not the fancy ones with designs or advertising, just basic solid color Bics. I vacuum seal them in groups of 5 with a silica gel packet to prevent any moisture issues. Then I distribute them everywhere. In my truck, in my bug-out bag, in jacket pockets, hidden in various locations. The cost is minimal, but the value when you need them? Absolutely priceless. Number 5. Heirloom seeds. Now, this one might seem less urgent than water or medicine, but stick with me because this is where you separate short-term survival from long-term thriving. Once the initial panic of collapse settles down, once people burn through their stored food, there's this moment of realization that hits everyone. We need to grow food. We need to become self-sufficient. And that's when seeds suddenly become the most valuable commodity imaginable. Forget Bitcoin. Forget stocks. Forget gold even. Seeds might become the actual currency of a post-collapse world. And here's why. You can't print more seeds. You can't inflate their value. They enable complete self-sufficiency. And most importantly, they multiply in value. You plant 1 tomato seed, you get a plant that produces 50 tomatoes, each containing dozens of seeds. That's exponential value growth. But not just any seeds. You need non-GMO, heirloom, open-pollinated seeds. Those expensive hybrid seeds from the store? They're designed to not reproduce properly. You can't save seeds from them and expect to grow food next year. That's how seed companies make money. But heirloom seeds? They've been passed down for generations specifically because they breed true. You can save seeds from your harvest and plant them year after year indefinitely. During the Great Depression, families survived on gardens. When food became scarce and money was worthless, the ability to grow your own food was the difference between making it and not making it. And that wasn't even a complete collapse. Imagine a scenario where grocery stores don't restock for months or years. Here's the trading value. A packet of quality heirloom seeds costs maybe $3 to $5 right now. But to someone who's starving, who has no way to get food, who realizes they need to start growing, or they won't survive, they'd trade almost anything for those seeds. And this is one of the few prep items where you're not giving away something you might desperately need later, because plants produce way more seeds than you'll ever use personally. Stock up on variety: tomatoes, beans, squash, peppers, herbs, greens. Get crops that grow well in your climate. And here's a critical tip. Keep them in the original packaging. When you're trying to trade seeds in a collapse scenario, people need to verify they're actually what you claim they are. Original packaging with dates and information provides that verification. Number 6, coffee and caffeine products. This one makes people laugh until they really think about it. How many people do you know who literally cannot function in the morning without their coffee? How many people drink energy drinks every single day? We're talking about physical dependence here, not just preference. Here's the reality. Caffeine is the most widely used psychoactive drug in the world. People are genuinely addicted to it. And when collapse happens, that addiction doesn't just go away. If anything, the physical demands of survival make caffeine even more valuable. You're working harder, sleeping less, under constant stress. Caffeine provides energy and alertness that could literally be the difference between making it through the day and collapsing from exhaustion. But beyond the physical need, there's the psychological aspect. In a world where everything's falling apart, where stress is through the roof, where every day is a struggle, the simple act of having a cup of coffee becomes a precious moment of normalcy. Never underestimate the power of small comforts in maintaining mental health during extreme situations. Coffee and tea also have incredible trade value. They're small, they're lightweight, they're universally desired. A pound of coffee might cost you $10 now, but to someone going through withdrawal in a collapse scenario, they'd trade valuable supplies just to feel normal again. During World War II, coffee was used as currency by soldiers because it was so universally desired. Here's what to stock. Instant coffee stores easier and last longer than beans. Tea bags are incredibly efficient for storage space. Energy drink powder mixes. Caffeine pills for the most efficient storage. Diversify your caffeine sources because different people prefer different things, which means more trading opportunities. And here's something most people don't think about. Coffee is also useful for barter with people who don't even drink it regularly. When you're working 12-hour days doing physical labor, trying to fortify your home, trying to haul water, trying to chop firewood, that boost of energy from caffeine becomes incredibly appealing even to people who never touched the stuff before. Number 7, alcohol in small bottles. And no, I'm not just talking about people who want to get drunk, though honestly, that's a factor too. Alcohol serves multiple critical purposes in a collapse that make it incredibly valuable. First, medical use. Before modern antibiotics and pain management, alcohol was the go-to for both disinfection and pain relief. It's still effective for both. Rubbing alcohol is great for wound cleaning, but drinking alcohol like vodka or whiskey, it can disinfect in a pinch, and it provides pain management when nothing else is available. I've heard stories from field medics about people with severe toothaches who would trade almost anything for a shot of whiskey because the pain was unbearable and there were no dentists available. Second, psychological relief. Look, I know some people think this is irresponsible to talk about, but let's be realistic. When people are living in constant stress, constant fear, constantly worried about survival, a drink becomes an incredibly valuable escape. During the Great Depression, during Prohibition even, alcohol consumption didn't stop. People found ways to get it because that brief relief from crushing reality was worth the cost. Third, trading value. Alcohol is one of those vice items that disappears fast during any crisis. People who drink, people who are addicted, people who just want a moment of relief, they'll pay premium prices for it. And because it's consumable, it doesn't create ongoing competition like other barter goods might. You trade it, they drink it, it's gone. Here's the strategy for stockpiling alcohol. Stick with small bottles, like airplane bottles or pint sizes. This maximizes your trading opportunities. If you only have big bottles, you're forced to make big trades. But with small bottles, you can make multiple smaller trades that benefit you more. Stock cheap vodka and whiskey. They store well and serve multiple purposes. Stay away from beer and wine. They don't store as long and take up too much space for their value. I keep a case of small vodka bottles specifically for barter. Cost me less than $50, takes up minimal space, and in a collapse scenario, that case could be worth hundreds or thousands in trade value. By the way, I know some of this stuff can feel overwhelming, especially if you're just starting to think about preparation. Trust me, I've been there. When I first started prepping back in 2012, I was completely broke and had no idea where to begin. That's why I put together a free guide that shows you exactly how to turn $50 into a 90-day food supply. It's the exact system I used when I was just getting started. This guide includes the specific shopping list with actual brands and current prices, plus 37 items that most people never think to stockpile but are absolutely critical in an emergency. There's even a section on emergency meals you can make with zero cooking fuel, which is incredibly important if power goes out or fuel becomes scarce. It's completely free. I just need to know where to send it. The link is right there in the description below or in the pinned comment. Grab it now while you're thinking about it, because this is exactly the kind of practical information that helps you get started without spending a fortune or getting overwhelmed. Preparation doesn't have to be expensive or complicated. Now let's talk about number 8, hygiene products. Soap, toothpaste, toothbrushes, feminine hygiene products, razors, shampoo, dental floss. This category sounds so basic, so mundane, that most people completely overlook it. But let me tell you what happens when you go 2 weeks without soap in a survival situation. First, you feel disgusting. I mean, genuinely, deeply uncomfortable in your own skin. But it's more than just comfort. Poor hygiene in collapse scenarios is one of the fastest ways for disease to spread. When people can't wash properly, when they can't maintain basic cleanliness, infections spread like wildfire. Skin infections, respiratory infections, digestive issues, all of these become life-threatening when you don't have access to medical care. During the siege of Sarajevo, One of the most requested items wasn't food or weapons. It was soap. People were desperate to feel clean, to maintain some basic dignity, to prevent the diseases that were killing people in the unsanitary conditions. And the people who had stockpiled hygiene items, they could trade them for almost anything they needed. Here's what makes hygiene products so valuable in barter situations. First, they're universal. Everyone needs them, regardless of age, gender, or situation. Second, they're consumable, which means ongoing demand. Once someone uses soap, they need more soap. That creates consistent trading opportunities. Third, they represent dignity and normalcy in a world that's fallen apart. Think about it from a psychological perspective. The simple act of brushing your teeth, washing your hair, feeling clean, these small routines provide massive mental health benefits when everything else is chaos. The person who can offer these small comforts becomes incredibly valuable in their community. Stock up on the basics. Bar soap lasts longer than liquid and takes up less space. Travel-size products are perfect for trading because they're pre-portioned. Feminine hygiene products are critical and often completely overlooked by male preppers, but they have massive trade value. Toothbrushes and toothpaste, because dental problems can become life-threatening without access to dentists. I've got a bin dedicated just to hygiene items for trading. Cost me maybe $150 to fill with travel sizes and basics, but in a collapse, that bin represents months of trading power. Number 9. Duct tape and repair supplies. Everyone thinks about stockpiling food and water, but here's what actually happens in an extended collapse. Everything breaks. Your tent tears, your backpack strap snaps, your jacket rips, your shoes split, your tools break, and there's no store to buy replacements, no Amazon delivery, nothing. Clothing and gear degradation is one of the most overlooked aspects of long-term survival. When you're using your stuff hard every single day, when you're pushing equipment to its limits, things fall apart way faster than you'd think. And without the ability to repair items, you're basically watching your survival capability erode one break at a time. Duct tape is the obvious choice here, and yeah, it's useful, but you need more than that. WD-40 for lubrication and rust prevention. Superglue for quick fixes. Zip ties, which are incredibly underrated. Paracord, baling wire, JB Weld for permanent repairs. This stuff is cheap now, but when you need it and don't have it, you're in trouble. Let me tell you a story from the Texas freeze in 2021. My neighbor was trying to secure a tarp over his broken window in freezing wind. He was out there with rope, trying to tie it down, fingers going numb. Took him almost an hour, and the tarp still wasn't secure. I walked over and handed him a pack of heavy-duty zip ties. Problem solved in 5 minutes. That tarp stayed secure through the entire storm. He tried to pay me $50 for that pack of zip ties right there on the spot. That's when you know something has real value. But here's the deeper value of repair supplies. They extend the life of everything else you own. That sleeping bag that cost you $200? With proper repairs, it can last for years instead of becoming useless after one tear. Those work boots that are impossible to replace in a collapse? Some glue and patches keep them functional indefinitely. The trading value is massive too. People are going to have broken gear, broken equipment, broken homes. The person who can actually fix things, who has the supplies to make repairs, becomes one of the most valuable people in their community. It's not just about trading the supplies either. It's about trading the service, the skill of repair combined with the materials. I keep multiple types of tape, multiple types of adhesive, multiple types of fasteners. Total investment may be $100, but it gives me the ability to fix almost anything, which in a collapse scenario is worth far more than the money I spent. Number 10. Batteries in all sizes. Here's something that's going to sound obvious once I say it, but most people haven't really thought through. In a grid-down situation, all your battery-powered devices become completely useless the moment the batteries die. Your flashlight, your radio, your medical devices, your emergency equipment, all of it requires batteries. And batteries are one of those items that disappear from shelves instantly when people panic. During any natural disaster, batteries are typically gone within the first few hours. I've watched it happen multiple times. Storm warning goes out, everyone rushes to the store, batteries are the first thing to vanish along with water and bread. The most critical sizes are AA, AAA, and 9-volt. These power the vast majority of common devices. But don't overlook specialty batteries either. CR1.23, watch batteries, hearing aid batteries. These become incredibly valuable to the specific people who need them, and because they're less common, fewer people stock them, which means more trading opportunities. Here's the strategic approach. Stock both disposable and rechargeable batteries. Disposables for long-term storage and trading. Rechargeables for personal use with solar chargers. That combination gives you both immediate power and long-term sustainability. Think about the actual power needs in a collapse. You need light at night. Flashlights require batteries. You need information about what's happening. Radios require batteries. You need to communicate over distance. Walkie-talkies require batteries. You need medical devices like glucometers or blood pressure monitors. They require batteries. Without power, people are quite literally in the dark about what's happening, unable to communicate, unable to see at night, unable to use critical medical equipment. That's a desperate situation, and desperate people will trade valuable items for the batteries they need. I've got a storage system with hundreds of batteries, organized by size, with dates written on them. I rotate stock every few years, using the oldest ones personally and replacing them with fresh. Total investment may be $200, but the peace of mind and trading power, absolutely worth it. Number 11, propane and small fuel containers. When the grid goes down, when natural gas lines fail, when heating systems stop working, people need three critical things: heat, light, and cooking capability. Propane provides all three. Small camping propane tanks are absolutely perfect for collapse scenarios. They're standardized, they're portable, they store indefinitely, and everyone recognizes their value. A single 1-pound propane tank can run a camp stove for several hours or provide light through a propane lantern for days. During extended power outages, I've watched the value of propane skyrocket in real time. People who depend on electric stoves suddenly can't cook food. People who depend on central heating are freezing. People who thought they were prepared realize their generator needs fuel, and propane becomes the solution to all these problems. The beautiful thing about small propane tanks is the portability and trading efficiency. Unlike a huge propane tank that's difficult to move and hard to portion for trades, these small tanks are perfect units of exchange. Someone needs to cook a meal? One tank. Someone needs heat for a night? One tank. It's standardized, it's universally understood, and it solves immediate critical needs. Stock up on the 1-pound green camping tanks. They're cheap right now, about $5 to $7 each, but in a situation where people are cold and hungry, worth easily 10 times that in trade. Also grab a few adapters that let you refill the small tanks from larger tanks. That extends your capability significantly. Store them properly in a cool, dry place away from living areas for safety. Mark them with dates. And here's a strategy most people miss. Also, stock the equipment that uses propane. Camp stoves, propane heaters, propane lanterns. In a collapse, having the tools that use fuel becomes just as valuable as having the fuel itself. Number 12, salt. This is the sleeper item on this list. The one that sounds so basic, so common, that people completely overlook it. But salt has been used as literal currency throughout human history for a very specific reason. It's absolutely essential for human survival and food preservation. Your body requires salt to function. You lose salt through sweating, especially in stressful survival situations where you're working hard every day. Without adequate salt intake, you die. It's not optional. And in a collapse where processed foods aren't available, where you're eating basic staples, salt deficiency becomes a real and serious threat. But beyond nutrition, salt is the original food preservation method. Before refrigeration, before canning, before any modern food storage, humans use salt. You can preserve meat, fish, vegetables, all with salt. That ability to make food last months instead of days, that's the difference between surviving winter and starving. Salt also has medical applications. Saline solution for wound cleaning, gargling salt water for infections, treating certain skin conditions. It's been used medically for thousands of years because it works. Here's the shocking part. Salt literally never expires. You can store it for decades, centuries even, and it remains perfectly usable. It's one of the only truly permanent prep items, and it's incredibly cheap right now. You can buy 25-pound bags of salt for under $10. During the Roman Empire, soldiers were partially paid in salt. That's where the word salary comes from. Salt was so valuable that it served as currency. And in a collapse, when food preservation becomes critical and people are sweating through physical labor every day, salt returns to that high-value status. The trading value is subtle but powerful. Most people won't think to stock extra salt, which means you're filling a need that others don't even realize they have yet. And when they do realize it, when they taste under-seasoned food day after day, when they need to preserve a successful hunt, when they develop salt deficiency symptoms, that's when your stockpile becomes incredibly valuable. I keep several 25-pound bags stored in sealed containers to prevent moisture. Cost me less than $50, takes up minimal space, lasts forever, and provides massive value in trade or use. Stay prepared. Stay practical. And remember, the best time to prepare was yesterday. The second best time is right now. When everyone else is scrambling for solutions, you'll already have them. And that's not just survival, that's thriving when others are barely hanging on. If this helped you, hit subscribe. Drop a comment below with which item surprised you most, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. I'll see you in the next one.